Good morning. Still stuck in SaVana trying to escape, blacklisted by talent agents, and this could be the reason, even though it's sort of a self-defeating process, that I was my inspiration, it goes back to the Omega curse, worst inspiration, alienation, torture, with ADHD, overactive writer's mind. So I've basically been alienated since I arrived in SaVana in 2010, and before that, in Aspen, in Jackson Hole, I was around people, but I never had made friends, and I tried. I've gone out of my way to make friends, but I have trouble connecting and staying connected. It's kind of like this island that I'm stuck on. And so the inspiration is fury over the my Muse inspiration for this piece, the SunZoo's The Art of Modern War, was fury at the system for not taking better care of me. So I pointed out a lot of the nocturnal, predatory, strategic the strategies that I deciphered. So I'm going to start reading this. Like I said, I was tortured mad. I'm pissed off because I've wasted decades, the prime of my life, unable to. I don't have competent resources, and I have had big plans. In 1996, I tried to launch a Renaissance. I tried to launch. There was a internet company in '96 that I wanted to be a part of. That I wanted, but I had zero resources. I was always handicapped. It was all, and this handicapping has to do with shrinkage and kidnapping, in my estimation. Handicapping is nothing more than a way to the zoo cage kidnapping. So, a tortured existence, no competent resources. I'm lucky if I even have, and the people that I talk to don't have the mental capacity to help me escape. And that's probably why I've been surrounded by deadweight dullards my entire life. So I started a email writing campaign in 2007 when I was in Aspen, trying to become famous, to escape this free range crystal bubble passive stalking kidnap. So the fury inspired this project, The Art of Modern War, and this was the initial. And I wrote this around the time I was busy writing. I had my prolific year in 2023. I wrote a bunch because I had my meds were factored right. That's always more important than the talent, the meds, because doctors are gods almighty. Doctor Who. So, I'm going to start with SunZoo, Art of Modern War. I'm going to read this and then get into some other aspects. Competition is war. Some people are crazy, unable to handle competition, like moral, rational, humanistic beings, and devolve to animalistic beast mode while waging competitive war. The current scenario allows for gray area, shadow, nocturnal methods to exploit economically and seize control of power structures, using revolutionary media to brainwash sacred equal voters. Democracy's freedoms, vulnerabilities are definitely used to facilitate Art of Modern War aggressions by nefarious factions. There's so much evil perpetrated in the name of freedom and democracy. There needs to be a discrepancy between the levels of competition globally defining the barriers of behavior. How far will they go to achieve masterdom dominance? Is there a devolved predatory sickness permeating through competitive global society because of the massive stakes in the mutating games and prevalent ideological worship as dogma, creating unbreachable divides threatening future sanctity? There's a disintegrating, disorienting state of existence prevalent throughout many dimensions of the universe. Colliding friction causing sparks, forest fires, destroying massive terrain with no overt big picture perspective or proper guidance logic to alleviate the destructive forces. That's the intro paragraph. The world is filled with code and processors, interpreting orders, mutating society in many numbers of ways. There are secret wars over processing power to inflict dominance over systems, to covertly lead by destabilizing forces, overhauling ideology. Playing these mutations offers opportunities to exploit. This is one of the many underhanded ways to exploit the scene to gain advantages and implement agendas to control and exploit. Change comes in many shapes and dimensions to nations. In the modern war, weapons of change permeate borders to mutate systems. Fickle mob rule fluctuates based on media tinkering with mentality based on certain agendas from diverse forces. Democracy rule has many vulnerabilities to change, which can be seen as destruction of historic foundational power. Structures forced to fight to maintain control. Flooding a nation with tidal waves of economic aggression decimates control, deviating focus of leadership. A prominent modern weapon is economies of scale. Simply throwing printing press, casino capitalism, no-limit cash at a target is used to transfer control and mutate a system's power structure viability. Acquisitions of economic assets for seemingly pittances from massive raid or war chests, never-ending supply leads to shrinkage of economic potency by siphoning economic power to a foreign national from a nation, weakening the foundations and lessening controls by power structures. Factor in media carpet bombing, mutating ideology, gaining control of demographic factions, aligning with power party mentality, use cool to undermine use, loyalty to the system, questioning belief structures for those seen on media, creating a revolutionary sentiment, undermining power structure, allowing for war machines to move in and gain masterdom over a nation by controlling assets, depleting economic power, and media brainwashing sectors to revolt against traditional foundations seen in a negative light and rendered impotent and easy to control. Economies of scale. Bigger is better and can afford to buy anything offering masterdom controls over global stability. Forcing world to race bigger, which they cannot compete with super fast, powerful, advanced weaponry economic machines. Therefore, acquisition shifts control to foreign entities, inflicting change through brainwashing ideology like secret covert colonization of nations to inflict masterdom. These distinct advantages lead to smash and grab looting more than capitalism. The morality is absent from current system of sacred individualism, mutated predatory because of superpower pride, drunk and disorderly. Winning the hearts and minds with revolutionary media, meat tenderizer, butchering. Army of idle, biological warfare, spreading viral trends to acclimate to purported ideological agendas and media air force outlets, carpet bombing mentality of nations to deviate ideology to be more susceptible to invasion and colonization control, preparing the sacrificial lambs for digestion by superpower and gullible assets, afraid of facing wrath to garner hierarchy positioning controls over global power structures. Rather than allowing a real global governance to solve many problems and attempt to elevate depressed nations, the top tier nations race bigger and send in the economic war machines to gain imperialistic control, conquering power structures of nations. Anyone who objects is targeted by massive weaponry and butchered, destabilizing power structures to eliminate potential threat to global domination. Global ideological uniformity is sought to validate oppressors' sound footing. Any opposing ideological presence is like a virus if weakness is detected, justifying as healthy concerns massive rapid attacks globally, too big to fail or lose mentality. Media hype machines, beauty shop cosmetology of system perpetuates grand illusion facade as propaganda brainwashing gullible underlings, wallowing in mediocrity or worse, seeking to play at the big league levels as players. A notion used as destructive, destabilizing force to those that can't compete. Rather than global elevation through awakening and evolution, there is a massive attack to gain masterdom controls over nations, like livestock to be butchered, by those with the global power. Once masterdom control structures in place, then acclimate underling nations to superpower systems, ideological agendas when it is too late and there is not enough power to object to change of global system. Gaming democracy vulnerabilities is a method of garnering historical respect for downtrodden, the warrior pride, and seizing control of percentages of nations for future utilization, potentially belligerent. The most depressed and downtrodden peoples of the world migrate to prosperous nations, mutating traditional genetic identity, seeking better lives, but once healthy and acclimated, often grow bitter, disgruntled at discrepancies in class structure, creating virulent backlash against nation. Melting pots are much more difficult to control than nations with homogeneous genetic identity. Theoretically, the nationalistic genetic identity, fraternal camaraderie, kindnesses led to a more socialism type system. The question of the future is, will the same fraternal kindnesses that cost taxpayers so much still be seen as vital to a system drowning in debt because of drunk party rule, lack of real leadership? One bizarre theory I have is because of formerly pure-blooded with royalty and aristocracy, was a secret war waged by Melting Pot USA as preventative medicine in case economic potency was ever questioned, and USA deemed inferior because melting pot to Europe's deep-old blood homogeneous nations. Was there a secret CIA war or Ivy League war or Yankee war on Europe to undermine and eradicate socialism deemed a virus threat? Theoretical plan was put into effect by Yankee hippie melting pot media revolution. World press follows the USA press because it is worshipped like gods. White House supremacy and King God dollar. Press is the new religion. Journalists are untouchable, sacred, holy men in modern age. Freedom fighters for the oppressed that mutated to predatory revolutionaries, which they hide because they control the flow of information. Using weakness as strength, a real smart, strategic, long-term move that is still being called into question as Cold Civil War rages for control of the most powerful nation on earth. The funny semiotic signage, MLC, Misery Loves Company, The Secret War, Midland, Bush CIA Secret War on Europe, the Midland Lutheran College Warriors. Give downtrodden Africans and Muslims warrior pride so they can join forces with the USA, who elevated diversity ideology and rebelled to destabilize Europe. And Fremont, who was born in SaVana, where El Baal, LNG, Napoleonic Code Louis, exiled to prevent potential of new Holy Roman Empire, sabotaged dim Catholic world for consumption. The Yankee hippie melting pot media revolution infected Europe with kindness of melting pot diversity, acceptances, and the migrant armies began infiltrating gaming democracy vulnerabilities, while media attacked royalty and aristocracy elitism, invoking class warfare to weaken and tenderize meat. Mutation of ideology took a while, but acceptances of diversity was made the norm. Therefore, acceptances of flows of migrant armies, mutating demographics of nations from pureblood to melting pot, rendering potential threat to melting pot dollar supremacy obsolete, all the while massive economic growth from economic war machines spreading throughout the globe as systematic dominance propaganda to mutate popular opinions while revolutionary media expanded to foreign shores as Air Force to carpet bomb ideological mentality, to accept diversity and weaken borders, to tenderize meat for democracy grinder cowboy branded hamburger planet. The real war in Europe has not yet begun. I predict real problems in the next 100 years. Europe is a much different place. It has been mutated and butchered for mass consumption rather than being seen as a historical treasure and used as an example for developing other nations. As I spoke earlier, the entrenchment and acclimation making migrants healthy, creating a disgruntled, bitter dissatisfaction, creating class warfare and racial warfare and religious warfare against the system. Will Europe be evolved enough because of diversity of many nations to avoid race war tendencies like the USA? Revolutionary media in USA has proven by undermining traditional power structures in the USA, they will incite rebellion with minority factions to undermine and weaken European nations' traditional power structures. Will the European media break from following example of USA media when their nations are facing bitter dissent conflicts and turn nationalistic, or will they see this as class warfare to attack those with wealth and power by mutating nations? The kindness has come from an infused pride and sacred individualism based on extreme power grab by democracy forces, equal votes, all men are created equal sentiment, and the sacredness of every life being special, which is a media-propagated fantasy to turn individuals predatory to sell more papers, in my estimation. Add some spice. We're facing a soon future overpopulation nightmare on this planet, and the sacredness of every life is gaining resurgency through technological connectivity potency rather than rational thought trying to plan for difficult future with many problems only getting worse as Project X mob rule swarm drunk party rages because of who sees control of the system and the maximization of power through manipulation of the masses. Manipulation of the masses is a key proponent to art of modern war. Blitzkrieg push for unadulterated global totalitarian democracy has infused massive amounts of power in political gods at the expense of the stability and foundations of power in nations. Totalitarian democracy gives maximum power to revolutionary media manipulating masses, feeble minds, and strict puppet controls of politicians because of a lack of big picture perspective and leadership, because nocturnal dome planet will not free its people to think rationally with a full spectrum of intelligence to make decisions. It is more about maintaining and maximization of power while economic war rages, seizing control of the globe. Revolutionary media has grown more virulent since gaining so much unchecked power, with no one really delving deep, questioning their motives and methods. The revolutionary media snowballed into an avalanche affecting global change for many diverse motives, while their participants garner sacred godlike status through masses of disgruntled followers seeking to matter through any means necessary, get into the big league games. These sacred idols shape the global minds as puppets to wield like a swarm weapon of mass destruction, changing the landscapes with particular agenda. Who is controlling the big picture agendas? This is where the media turned predatory revolutionary when it realized it has omnipotent powers and unchecked propensity to shine. Absolute power corrupts. There are many divisions of the media, most of whom are subservient to the whims of the Democratic Party, trying to undermine traditional power structures of nation, creating cold civil war while expanding to foreign shores as global credibility, camaraderie to the cause. There are the haves and the have-nots, using disruption of power and seizing control of the system. The have-nots are trying to seize, snatch, and grab the loot and power created by system games and simply of the haves. This constant disruption leads to destabilization of societies that is spreading like disease Reason called the revolutionary media. There are many fronts to the wars being waged: class war, race war, economic war, ideological war, religious war. Divisiveness weakens structures and allows for exploitation of power to be wielded and manipulated by those with the means of mass communication. Gagging opposing opinions, like the Devil's Advocate movie, voodoo priest who hammered a nail into a cow tongue to keep the prosecutor choking silent is a common occurrence in modern war. Controlling methods of communication was used to brainwash fickle masses. Hiding opposing viewpoints makes controlling minds easier, so the fight over the airwaves is bloody. Controlling the idle army is in a volatile time because of vital technological connectivity is vital to perseverance of ideology. As someone who is a gonzo journalist revealing truths as I perceive them, and centrists thinking both sides are crazy, I am blacklisted by talent agents who would allow me resources for making money for my brain that could allow me to escape my captivity and influence many more brains than the few that read my historically relevant scribblings online. I guess the title of my pathetic, wasted life biography should be Aborted Competition. Talent agents can make or break idols based on their ability to procure projects to garner the spotlight and give them credibility. In the modern age of technological connectivity is more reliant on fickle followers who are told what or how to think by prevalent media outlets. There are plenty of ways of destroying idols if they are revolutionary against the cause. The vast sums of wealth and luxury branded credibility they buy keeps them docile for now. Will there be an insurgency of influencers with varying opinions inciting class warfare or revolution? Controlling the narrative to make it easier to brainwash masses is why when Elon Musk bought Twitter and offered a voice to the right as well as the left, it infuriated so many on the left because they might lose their almost monopolistic media power, hold progress for past ideological advances. The right has gone way too far right, so that helps the left. Suffering from going way too far left, pushing the envelope seems to be the name of the game. Pandering to extremists, given credibility by the media looking to sell papers, not stabilizing forces. Therefore leading to extreme hate of wide diverse expanses and my diagnosed systematic insanity drunk on superpower. The notion of cool and popularity is a huge weapon in the art of modern war. Popularity leads to followers that can lead to monetization and escaping normalcy into the game. Uncool can be used as a weapon to discredit and therefore render impotent, insignificant, burying particular opinions. Fame is all about popularity, and the swarms of masses that follow like a religion, the staged lives, carefully manicured opinions to protect the sanctity of quantity of the followers over actually making a meaningful statement unless it is focus group tested to be accepted by mainstream revolutionary media and not face retribution from opposing forces. Quelling controversy is key to facilitating notoriety for the sacred idols, needing the followers to create vast mountains of cash through acceptable circumstances of society. One reason society is moving more towards puritanical, the revolutionary media controlling the narrative by attacking any systematic discrepancy deemed unsuitable, abnormal, and the list of abnormality grows more endangered, unlike previous frivolous societal times. This is a symptom of the revolution needing justification of normalcy to facilitate its brand of change through acclamation acceptability. Traditional free spirits are dying, replaced by heavily originality decorated stage doll personas, fitting into regimented rows of assembly line crops to be indoctrinated in a mutating system to hopefully, once goals achieved, allow for extremist free spirits to flourish again, paying for the revolutionary ideology with prescribed acclamation. Traditional free spirits are the casualties of war. Necessity to normalize, to be mainstream acceptable, solidifying the change fought over by pressing agendas over past decades, ranking higher than a rebellious spirit infused into generational assembly line doll factories utilized for trickle-down hedonism, fantasy, flesh markets. Extremist personalities attempt to normalize radical behavior to feed the troops on their quest for revolutionary change. Imagine the hedonism if the revolution didn't need to appeal to the normalization middle to sway sentiment. Manipulating the empowerment of disgruntled masses yearning to breathe free and make their mark and find an avenue fighting to enter the higher level games, requiring monetary compensation, requires cohesive ideology permeating mutated societal normalcy. The revolution requires superpower-infused armies through mutating competition predatory by instilling systematic pride in sacred individuals, creating a virulent, rabid tenacity, tearing at the fabric of society, condemning, persecuting any abnormality to gain a footing to escape the pits of mediocrity, like war games, hacking to play games, but creating threat of world war, because secretly exporting revolutionary ideology abroad, which the media controls through beauty shop, cosmetology, masking, grand delusion, system, rebellious nature. Revolutionary media war over planetary evolution is currently being waged to control narrative in case global awakening ever happens, to maintain maximization of power and control over masses. Keeping minds small and blind from big picture perspective truths allows them to be easier to brainwash and control, or allow politicians to be bigger gods that media controls through strict scrutiny of every aspect of their public lives. These strict scrutinies have crept into every sector of society, most notably global wealth and power, allowing revolutionary media more power and control over these previously untouchable entities. Revolutionary media has lessened the power of money to get away with things through strict normalization scrutinies, equalizing the planet in the media's undercurrent class warfare. The hypocrisy is laughable of parading banner motives of freedom, democracy, and equality while attempting to seize control of supremacy structures, destroying foundations of civilization simply for more power, to free oppressed sacred individuals so they can be rebranded, indoctrinated, brainwashed, manipulated, and controlled as free players in the grand scheme consumerist games by casino capitalism, house who always wins. I am a free market capitalist, but I also realize that for the good of the planet, things have gotten way out of control and need to be reined in for stability of the future. Or unmask the evil empire and inflict masterdom dominance over those wallowing in primordial ooze, suffering from lack of free markets, concerns because of not profit maximization motivated. Those with wealth and power have built these economic war machines to spread their influences. The best defense is a good offense. Destroy the competition before it grows up and gets on the field. Mentality. Garnering masterdom over insignificant nations and entities. This is evil in my estimation, and reason for calling current superpower steering planet poorly to exploit economically evil. But those in control write history, and even in the age of free press and technological connectivity, those with the resources shape thought processes because of their success-driven credibility. I wrote to The Economist via Twitter and Interpol that if I had the resources, which I am not allowed, attempts to erase my theories from history to avoid viral backlash potential, just as I was eliminated from competition to kill the competition with Louisiana global power player potential, I want to make a map and chart every economic fingerprint of every nation to see who is the most belligerent and investigate motives. Free market chaos swarm avalanche is loved because supposedly there is no motive underlying nefarious conspiracy and therefore no liability over the destruction. But there is intelligent consciousness of the free market swarms of economic war machines working towards the goal of world domination. The economic war machines, the charts of these economic aggressions would include brands, franchises, mergers, charts of these economic aggression and acquisitions, any economic fingerprints. I want to see the big picture economically, who controls what in the world and how. I am for free trade, but in a rapidly escalating world, there might need to be controls placed on certain aggressions to maintain order and allow for downtrodden nations to rise above the primordial ooze and stabilize for the good of the planet. Imperialistic global domination is real concern when there is a war over control of nation. Theoretically, literally insane because too much diversity spreads bipolar, manic, extreme hate political parties wielding so much power. Global domination is one of the only uniting forces, and there is evil empire nefarious covert chicanery methods taking place to facilitate that horrific goal. Many in the superpower nation joke or fight against the notion of real global governance, seen as threat to masterdom of the planet and profit maximization. There are many problems around the globe that need to be fixed, that a global government with the proper resources could address. This is where I come up with the superpower steering planet poorly to exploit nations economically, fear of change, losing manufactured advantages, creating masterdom opportunities. I wrote this soon after I finished my book, Electronic Oblivion, which was the basis of it was a semi-autobiographical story about an alienated inspired revolutionary misanthropic writer named Karl. My entire life I've been tortured for the name Barry Marx. Because of Karl Marx and communism. So I wanted to write a story, what I thought Karl Marx would think, the way he would think in the modern age, a mind like his, from what I understand, about a revolutionary in that aspect. And so this was written soon after. In the book Electronic Oblivion, I talk a lot about global governance and things like that. Things have changed rapidly. It's still a banned book, but there's a lot to this. I've been collecting notes on this art of modern war for a long time, many different aspects. It's a book I hope to write one day if I can ever get my mind straight and focus enough, and maybe hire a competent team to work with me. But I had this manufacturing weakness as vulnerabilities to screw. This happened to me. It's like you get trapped. It's like a butchering. You're butchering, the 4-H butchering. And this has happened in the art of modern war to nations. And those just happened. That's the first, that was my first interpretation. I've added to the book. I'm writing a chapter of, as an escape attempt clause, I started writing a chapter of Instagram comments to global VIPs, to royals, to aristocracy, to heiresses, to heirs, to celebs and influencers, and I write these highly controversial strategic comments about me being captive and about all my ideas. When I realized that there was the theory that I came up with was that there was a secret war being waged on Europe by the United States, most notably by a media war, and this theory and I touched on it in the essay, that meat tenderized carpet bombing by the media Air Force, the ideology, and it's all about democracy as a vulnerable force to be manipulated. That's where it got into the gaming democracy vulnerabilities. Media manipulation of the masses being the prevalent control methods, therefore creating dissent. It's all about class warfare and camaraderie, and it's all a method of, while the key seems to be eradicating pride and nationalism, which toughens the meat when you get a nation that is proud of its heritage, of its genes and things like that, it is less susceptible to mutation. So they used the horrific Hitler scenario and the nationalism of Germany as a method to invade Europe. It was smart by the Yankee media. And so therefore they have created a melting pot Europe, which is much weaker than it was 20 or 30 years ago. Not to mention they don't have the economic advances, so they're susceptible to economic incorporation, masterdom controls. So it's really a strange sort of scenario as far as the manipulation of the masses, gaming democracy vulnerabilities. Democracy is probably one of the worst things that happened to Europe. They need, because of their value, their strength, they have weakened their strength. They have lost their muscle. They've turned muscle into fat that could threaten to kill them in the future, clogging arteries, by this lack of nationalism and pride. And that's the whole joke about them having royalty and the pride of royals and all of that sort of stuff. Whereas the royals are basically attacked by the media who are fighting class warfare. And that's one of the reasons I've come up with these agendas for the royals might have to work, and aristocracy might have to work. And land management is one of the key aspects, because free market chaos neglects much of land in much development of land. There's a lot of holes. That's one of the things I've written about a lot in my Fleur-de-Lis trilogy, The Rise of Caesar of Louisiana, who appoints aristocracy to manage the land optimally rather than free market chaos. I also gave Europe the option, when I saw the secret war on Europe raging, if they wanted to play the globalism card. The basis of my Electronic Oblivion book was this globalism philosophy. A key part about it is smart planet management. And the whole premise was based upon this art flyer I created. I used to hand out at Gallery Espresso, recruited zero daily for a long time. I handed out a bunch of them, got no response. It was calling for smart planet management, alternative leadership because of the horrific debt crisis and the chaotic insanity of the party system. I've added to it since then. I've added evolution of the species being a key part about this. Global governance was a key part. So as a defense mechanism, I told to Europe in this Art of Modern War Instagram comments to global VIPs, I told this to European royals and aristocracy and leaders, that they could mount a globalism campaign to be proactive as a defensive offense. Then therefore, if they illuminate this awakening global consciousness like I've been calling for, then It's a defense to the attack, which is undermining the foundations, eroding the foundations to sweep the leg, Cobra Kai, of Europe, and therefore it would bring about change. Be proactive as far as address the problems in downtrodden nations, solve a lot of the problems, and if we have to empower the global governance to do that, or if the superpower groups, the G7 or G20, want to take a more proactive global governance role, fix the problems, come up with plans to solve the problems. There are a lot of global problems that need addressing. Evolution of the species being key. There are all sorts of aspects. Smart planet management. Run the planet like a corporation. You know, if we're ever going to be, and one of the things I put in there was that if we're ever going to be and I call for building a space city colony, a permanent space city. They're talking about, which I think is a horrible idea, crashing the International Space Station. Keep it, you know, it's a monolith cornerstone to our evolutionary progress, and we want to crash it, fix the damn thing, and keep it in space as a museum sort of piece. Build a bigger space city that's permanent, that houses 1,000 people at a time, and then we transition to a space race people and start working on the problems of evolution of the species. And in order to, the cost of building a space city or advancing our space agenda, we're going to have a smart planet management that's run like a corporation, because the debt crisis is detrimental to technological progress. Especially, we can't afford to build this space city because of the debt crisis, so we've got to address that problem first, which is a flaw of the game democracy vulnerabilities. I could go on for a long time. I'm going to talk about, I've started writing this 007 BondAge Zoo Hostage Global Strategy Report on Twitter and compiled a bunch of notes. So this is kind of out of order, and I'll go over my interpretations of what I think. And this is all a chapter of the Art of Modern War book that I am writing. The ideology wars, the fight to brainwash masses to validate system valuation structures. There's a constant fight over the valuation structure. That's why I think that we had this secret war on Europe. Valuation structures. It validates melting pot could have been an inferior system because the majority of the world has old, deep blood. The USA is a system creator factory of sacred livestock, and they supersize them as Handicap and Harrison Bergeron against the old deep blood, theoretically, when then they're overpowering them. But the problem is, it is a detrimental precedent to the stability and smart planet management. Weaponization of the media. Actually, I've gotten into the weaponization of everything, and I think this goes back to the supersized sacred livestock. And if, in my theoretical estimation, Louisiana and me personally as St. Louis 9 are used as an anabolic steroid factory, funneling magic power from the Catholic world to supersize the livestock. Then the plan is they're sacred livestock in the United States, so eat the Catholic world. The Catholic world is just brain dead in my estimate. Senile, call them what you will. USA Catholics are the real cats playing sides. They've actually made the problem. They've butchered the Catholic world for the USA. That sort of mentality. It's crazy. Weaponization of everything is like an anabolic steroid rage. They take anything and everything and maximize the values and weaponize it to undermine, attack opposing ideological principle structures globally. So there's a weaponization of the media is a major key aspect of this. The media is used as a Air Force carpet bombing, brainwashing mentality to control the masses, gaming democracy vulnerabilities. And part of the Electronic Oblivion book, I call for a conscious awakening to a perspective. There needs to be an agenda, a plan, a perspective, a planetary plan to then facilitate an agenda rather than this free market chaos that just keeps fighting amongst itself. Masters connect competitive insanity bet, ideological colonization of Europe to subjugate, manipulating strategic interpretations to preserve intelligence reputations. Because of the flaw, and this all goes back to this guilty supersized dope lab Louisiana and me provide as slaves. Therefore, the healthcare, and since they worship a system of university intelligence, even though the intelligence of the system is flawed, they have to manipulate strategic interpretations of the intelligence by changing the rules of the game. That's what's happening now. Validations and personal power equations, system created ranks, round up herds to wield collective power as weapon to attack, collective power ideology validation, competitive combat to program system ideology, size variations, addictive to quantitative validation. Cash is king. Blood is trash. That is the whole thing about system created, validated by size matters. That way you can buy everything. That's one of the reasons for perpetuation of this game, is to preserve the advantages. There's variations in the personal power equations. That's one of the other contributions. That's one of the reasons I'm a slave theoretical, and which I tap into Louisiana, which Louisiana taps into the global parish Catholic world, funneling power through me and through these network schemes into vast networks like a dope lab. System created ranks, they fight for ranks, it's lava, it's not sedimentary like most of the world, so it's a chaos and destruction and weaponization of media motives. There's a lot of them. Gag alternative ideology makes brainwashing easier, I mentioned that. Moralistic trophy hunting, equalization expands mob rule powers. Covert revolution feeds on normalcy as common validation. Media creates divides in societies to exploit. The secret Doctor Who war on Europe. Doctor Who, there's a lot of ways to interpret it, but that is an act of war based upon, there's several interpretations. First of all, it's who are you for the doctor to cure you? Are you a lion? Are you a pig? Are you a cow? So then therefore, but in the United States, everybody is equal, so there's this uniformity to it. But in various parts of the world, there are different interpretations depending upon treatment. Then there's the whole section of if your validation, and this is where it pisses off the United States, and this is one, Doctor Who is a major part of the secret war on Europe, and the Doctor Who Caldwell Zoo fraud and head of the St. Louis 9 network, brainwashing, programming the world to this fraud. Doctor Who. So anybody can get a degree. System created ranks rather than blood mattering, like a royal system structure in Europe where blood matters. There's not all the predatory need to fight throughout the ranks. They don't progress rapidly, but I've got cures to that. They need a massive R&D network in Europe. But the Doctor Who premise of this doctor, who are you, who dat, that whole mentality of what is your agenda, what's the basis of your foundation. Genetics doesn't really matter. What nation, it's all this system created mutants. This is my estimation. And that's one of the major reasons that I am forced as a debt slave to a Doctor Who fraud, as a weapon of mass societal programming, brainwashing, WMD. Hopefully they're trying to wipe out the whole Catholic world to turn them into this Doctor Who fraud mentality, and to undermine the power of the validation of blood and genetics. And the flaw is we're coming into a genetic revolution soon. So that's a flaw in that system. Democracy and press, weakness for Europe. I've said that. Cohesive pride plans. Definitely needed a cohesive pride plan. Infuse pride. Limitations. It's always, they always take the worst. An extreme example of nationalism pride was Germany and Hitler. But there are you've got controls in place to limit, but there is a need for pride in Europe to maximize its values and its structure. Democracy is the worst thing that ever happened to Europe. They need royals as leaders, as a guiding hand, consciousness, but the media controls the royals by making them play this popularity contest with the constant threat of guns to head, revolutionary undermining. So they are forced, they're puppets. They're tied to their throne, they're tied down to their throne, puppets by the media. So the free press, weakness of Europe. Because Europe is decimated by the free press and democracy. They've lost a ton of value. Let's equate the value potentials from 2050 to now, see how it changes. R&D dome. Doctor Who system rank validation over blood volcano versus sedimentary. R&D domes. I think we need R&D domes. That is a key of the free market chaos. It has produced a lot, but the planet is filling up too much. We need R&D domes, specific university-specific plan developments, and develop corporations from there. Stable, sane country. Weaponization of democracy. That is a huge thing. That's where we get into the totalitarian democracy blitzkrieg. Because of the quantitative precedences of popularity, because the USA loves democracy because it is a superpower with a massive media air force to brainwash the voters to ideology, so it can rig elections legally. Gray area shadow Star Wars. But they can, and then they've got the economic war machine, so they love democracy because they have an advantage. Democracy is detrimental in a lot of nations because of the manipulations by outside forces, and it lessens the power of the power structure, so therefore it tenderizes the old marble steaks for consumption. Only for democracy if masters, that's what I was saying. Advantage to rig control power structure, most nations just puppets. Debt crisis, insane parties, democracy flaws, blitzkrieg. The J.W. Pepper Beastie Boys license deal, communications. Extreme Psycho Stalker Stealers, STEALERS. Mafia sabotage European royals to kill bond defense. That's where he gets into the law is God Almighty. The highness joke. You're not higher than the law. The law is higher than you. So therefore, the people's political gods matter more. That's blood is worthless. Trash. Cash is king. Popularity contest. Democracy. Totalitarian blitzkrieg. Powers. Absolute power corrupts. The Doctor Who Caldwell Zoo Animal Farm Revolution. Abort, assassinate Sun King. Kubrick queer steer and gag. That's the Muppets. That's my Muppet family. The puppets, like the royals I said were puppets. My family are short leash, financial leash, controlled bubbles, controlled options, controlled substances to ingest, gag. They're puppeting us. They're screwing us. They're puppeting us. In King's English, and it goes back to the Kubrick film, Full Metal Jacket. There's only steers and queers in Texas, and Texas screwed us as Muppets pretty bad. Sleeping Beauty gangbang. Oh wait, I got more on that page. Fight Club scenario. Are they going to blow up and reset is that what they're planning on? Their plan is to reset debt to zero after the Fight Club. After the party, it's a dine and dash in my estimation. And because the military of the United States, they have a distinct advantage even though they created a lot of the chaos flaws in the system. Personal injury, exorbitant valuations hinder science. China advantage. I definitely think China advantage. And I've got a section later I'm planning on talking about the social credit system and how that is a potential game changer to control methods based on risk management and insurance from a flawed democracy system. China, in my estimation, has an advantage anyway. The infrastructure, if you look at their society over the last 30 years, from their plans, a 5-year plan, the infrastructure development, massive advantage. Who would you rather have in a debt crisis, China or the United States? The United States has parties that are insane and hate each other, having to solve the debt crisis, or China, which has an authoritative system that can basically just butcher this. They can solve it. They have a huge advantage in debt. The BRICS, huge advantage for the BRICS. 3 billion. They are underdeveloped consumers, but the United States tariff wars might wake up the BRICS to develop consumer markets to sell their products because of the tariffs against the United States is 330 super fat consumers. But there are 3 billion really depleted Smurf consumers out there in the BRICS that can be grown into a huge market force. So are they going to develop? So that's an advantage for the BRICS. Technology. I just read a report. Jensen Huang said that AI and the AI development, China has 1 million people working on AI 24 hours a day. The United States and Silicon Valley has 20,000 people working. So that we don't sell them their chips, but they seem to be inventing chips. They're very inventive. So another huge advantage there. The social credit system, which I'll go ahead and skip into now that I'm on the China. The social credit system is a capitalism versus freedom, mechanized humanism, good rank control system. Basically, it's like a credit report in society to determine your rank and your power, and it can also control. So it's going to be and then when you factor in AI and the control mechanism and robots and drones and the big brother Orwellian nature, it's pretty much a nightmare. The competitive algorithms evolve the control structures. What they can do if they're smart is they create this good society, no crime. So in a risk management system, especially if this global debt crisis happens and they have to respawn the global economy, then it's a new world order. They're going to look at China's social credit system because of risk management, insurance controls, that they are a better system for control. They have no crime. They're easier to solve their debt crisis, and it might export franchises of the social credit system evolve into other nations. What they can work on it is like they have the 5-year plan system. Each AI can design individual plans for the citizenry to maximize the value of wealth, therefore increasing the state GDP based upon maximization of the individuals based on plans created by AI based upon this social credit system. Justify authoritative. Oh, it's invisible hand, invisible force fields of control. So they therefore have beauticianed the authoritative. It's a game they're stuck within, this matrix game that they're stuck within, that they're having to play. So they do not have to, the control mechanism, the authoritative control mechanism, they just use the rank system as control. So it's an invisible beautician to the system. Forces decision on capitalism, max profit competition, and independence in individuals' freedoms. Prediction. That's into the franchises. Then it gets into the system of CRISPR gene editing super babies, which they were on the cusp of. I just launched an article on my Evolve Art World website or Twitter page about how Silicon Valley is trying to genetically engineer babies. I am sure, since they don't believe in God over there in China, that they will eventually get into genetic engineering. I've already engineered babies, super babies, that are not able to get cancer, that once the technology advances, it will cure most diseases. So this will make risk management because of astronomical healthcare costs. It's easier to genetically engineer a baby from birth than it is to pay for a system to pay for healthcare. So they will therefore, for a profit maximization point, genetic engineer the future growth babies, and then therefore it's gonna be a mutation. But I think over the next 20 to 50 years we will see change, even though religion will be against it. But I think in Europe you'll see strong advance. The United States will probably lag way behind because of religion, but I think you'll see places in Europe, and there's a potentiality in other places. With AI decimates the middle class, it evolves to a humanism. This is one of my founding principles of globalism, is when AI decimates the middle class workforce and there's massive unemployment, does the create a universal health care sort of plan, socialism? But then again, it factors into, there's a lot of different ways. AI, there will be corporations that are invented by universities, in my estimation, that will then therefore pay its graduates based upon the corporate profit sharing plans that there's different ways that these AI, if they create a corporation that is mostly AI run, the profit is owned by universities or corporations, then profit sharing, you won't have to work because AI will take your job, but you'll still get paid. So that's a private sector way of universal health care where you don't work much, and yet it's taking care of. That's an evolution to a humanism, capitalism sort of mentality. Does the humanism capitalism replace max profit as a underlying facet of capitalism? So what happens to the premise of competitive stock prices? But then again, you got to look at it's a global system. So if you stop worrying about max profit, other corporations in other parts of the world will be growing up. They will compete and they will undermine the price structure, competitive supply and demand system of consumerism. So therefore, they will be. So it's gonna eradicate the socialism to my degree. It's a real. So I think max profit competition is. There'll be I think a fluctuating area because of the AI decimation of the workforce, but eventually, I think it will lead to a back to this capitalism. It seems to be the only major aspect of this. Capitalism is exploitation. VIP strategic vision to identify potential niche sectors of economy to exploit. I've got a question. Can AI be an idea farm based upon identifying capitalism niche markets to build AI corporations to exploit to produce profits? Can corporations create subsidiary corporations based upon AI to build that will be profitable? That's one of the future vision things I see. The vision to see the future, smartly visualize potential, grand scale niche exploitation grows industries and major corporations. Profits maximized with streamlined AI workforce. I've been trying to build economic development think tanks for a long time. Speculation vision gambles on competitive forces and fickle mobs, which can be developed through ideological manipulations by media targeting specific agendas of economic development. Developing media channels is vital in smart-going economies for tailored exploitation. Reading equations of opportunity is valuable skill. Grown consumers to exploit for economies to prosper. Can AI predict economic development by analyzing data equations? Universities or states with supercomputers running AI systems programmed to predict economic trends and perform multitudes of jobs as maximize competition to exploit max profits have a huge advantage in my estimation. Back to the 007 bondage zoo hostage report. J.W. Pepper was a Louisiana sheriff that was kind of made fun of in the James Bond, and I caught living hell about it. Yeah. Where am I now? Fight Club scenario, got that one. Personal injury exorbitant valuation hinders science. If in China advantage, this was another China advantage. If they do not have personal injury lawyer, sacred individual, me the people mentality, Tesla or Waymo or these other corporations that are trying to develop self-driving cars, if somebody gets killed, I read that a Tesla self-driving car killed a pedestrian. There was an award for $250 million against Tesla. Can you justify that? And is the science advancement more important than the sacred individualism of wealth? Eventually, self-driving cars will save lives, as they say. So China has a distinct advantage because they do not have to worry about the personal injury law attacking their science. They're more worried about advancement than the sacred individualism, supersized sacred livestock. Weaponization of everything to attack the underlying guilt, UFC, trickle-down society. Extreme games, weaponization of everything, global virus. World War Z, about the attacking zombies with Brad Pitt. Louis Omega JV and Dr. Who Caldwell, Debt Slave, St. Louis 9, Guilty Fraud Upgrades, Fat Farm, Healthcare, Roid Rage Attack, Weaponization of Media, Illusion, Supremacy, Virus. Garbage, the band Garbage had a thing called a song called Stupid Girl in 1995. Ignore Prince Louis Benchwarmer, LNG hostage bank officer, can't manage a state. This goes back to public access looters, Lil Wayne's World. And then the magic of masterdom over a VIP is a steroid, roid rage precedence. Who benefits? Manufacture weakness to exploit. I got into that. Desecrate treasured cities, value principles. Definitely. We need to preserve history rather than, and it goes back to the beauty of civilization as valuation versus sacred individual supersized livestock as valuation. Home Depot, college game day. Or, suburbs are worth seemingly a ton, but they're super valued. And that's one of the reasons for the growth model is it increases the GDP and the economic power. Strategic vision, the crime, racism, nocturnal gag strategy. Feminism and racism are huge weapons in the revolutionary media to undermine power structure, and it controls the dynamics and brainwashes to change and power structures and power imbalances and all that. I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just pointing out the fact that it's used as a weapon. Tenderizer Europe had potential weapon to play against USA, Depot, pure blood. I addressed that. Trump saw global strategic weakness and business advantage and charged. If Europe had a protected weapon shield, if it had that advantage to play the card of the Depot pure blood against the United States, that's a shield against, but they lost that weapon because of the Yankee Media War Machine, meat tenderizer, marble steaks, breeding revolution, space dwelling race. Another thing about China was they were supposedly creating mutants that were not susceptible to radiation. If you live in space, there's a lot of radiation, one of the major concerns. So, if we're ever going to be a space-dwelling race, we're going to have to create a mutation that is not susceptible to radiation if you're going to be in space for a long time. Only way genetic edited resistance radiation. Chinese working on Superman. Actual create new types of beings. There's the mutants derive best aspects of humans tailored to certain agendas. I think eventually, hundreds of years from now, there will be tailored individuals. There will be a wide variety of mutants. U.S. government shut down, sitting on $37 trillion debt. Global debt catastrophe prepared by European royals. Flaws of democracy, totalitarian absolute corruption laundered. New World Order negotiations, gospel of handicap. Handicapping seems to be a huge thing. I was forced to read Harrison Bergeron in 9th grade, me being 12-9 born in St. Louis 9 at Catholic High Bears. And that is a curse, weapon of mass destruction that is forcing me. Then they lowered me down the low. What they did was, as a JV handicapped, I was JV handicapped. Then they lowered me into the Omega, so I'm handicapped against Omegas. Keeps me real small GummyBear. That's the way of KiddNap. USS Kid, Destroyer, KiddNap. That's smart kidnapping by the mafia there. But handicapping seems to be a huge thing. We need a smart planet management rather than this nefarious chicanery Star Wars games to handicap. And then you get the variations evaluation. Like I said, you've got somebody with a McMansion who has trash genes, but he's got a doctoral college degree versus old world Europe blood who is worth $100,000. The McMansions were $10 million. You got a handicap on there, so that's considered handicapping? That's ridiculous. That's one of the game's precedences. It's programmed into the supercomputer for variations on the manipulation of handicapping. Let's see. Weaponization of everything. I use that a lot. Body stealers, reps, upgrades, roid, rage, guilt attack, weaponized healthcare. Healthcare weaponized is huge. Rank in the system. So if you're an alpha, rank in the system, and I'm an omega, even though I supply billions in power I power the alpha, but since I am ranked in the system omega, my healthcare matters least. I am a disease. That's the FLU flu versus the FLOU fluey shot. You know, kill the king and steal all its power and money and distribute it to the ranks, and then healthcare keeps me buried because I matter least to the frauds that stole my wallet and my ID theft, and they justify this. That's how you manipulate healthcare. So I matter least. So I get the worst resources in order to protect the healthcare of the alpha or the healthcare of people around me that outrank me, or then therefore keeps me buried as a weapon because they stole my wallet and they have better health and they rank higher in this bullshit fraud game grid. So then therefore I've got to stay buried as healthcare. So healthcare is a weapon of and I'm paying for the entirety of the healthcare system and all deals with. Let's see, Benchwarmer wasted Prince Louis motives. Yeah, Game Changer could have changed it into that goes into the Doctor Who mentality. If I would have been able to play as Prince Louis, blood would have mattered, and blood, that's bad for the United States. So instead they had to invade Europe because of the Doctor Who. So then therefore blood is trash, melting pot, then cash is king. So Prince Louis, sabotage, benchwarmer, billions stolen. Family bred small to be fight against the genetic power. You know, we were literally bred small and insignificant to keep us from, rather than building us with strong genes, powerful genes, and an empire family, Louisiana bred us small to keep us as a weapon again. They want to try to turn us as a weapon against, as pride, turn us as a weapon against the war. Debt slave, Alpha Louis, Hack Omega, WMD, Trash Planet for best for USA. Trash Planet, the Project X was a story about a massive party. Thomas Cub had a party at his family home and it just got wiped out. That's what's happened to the planet. Planet is trashed from democracy, parties, free press. They're involved. the reality of the lawyers are now trying to mutate the entire ideological principles of this world to justify Trashed Planet being cool, super cool, VIP, you know, that mentality, by bribing the underclasses to revolt. So then therefore the power structures, the people that own the homes, are then therefore trapped. That's a weapon used against them. That's an armed robbery. Now they just have to go in and loot all the assets. Smart. Project X. U.S. war versus Europe blood. U.S. closer aligned to communists. Definitely closer aligned. They feared me, Prince Louis. They justified me attacking, destroying me because of communism, but they're really communal. They're communists. It's a system-created, shared blood genes mutants, and then therefore, so they're closer aligned to communists than blood Europe. Fear and Loathing Triple Crown Breeders Club. 3L, Colorado, monogamy good for planet trash. Monogamy good. This whole Breeders' Cup genetics that gets into the genetic revolution, which we're on the cusp of. So they're trashing the planet as much as possible before the genetics revolution takes place, in my estimation. USA JV compared to China infrastructure, true. Oceans away from European blood, true. USA closest to the mafia. Secret hacker world wars. Fat USA pigs love trash. Dolly clone sheep fears 9 to 5. Best little whorehouse in Texas. Cusp of super baby revolution. Matrix technology, Tron Ares, secret war, sooner land grab, genetic revolution, or planet trash party. Smart plan, planet management. Real nation, cities, values. Gospel, handicap, cheat code hacks. The handicap is about a cheat code hacks. That's where it gets into me. They cheat code. By burying me, at the bottom, the cheat code is that it programs the system to attack the source to extract. That's some fancy drilling oil. Earl. They drilled into Neiman Marcus jewelry, or the whole joke about the Louvre robbery of Napoleon's crown jewel, France's crown jewels. They drilled into Louisiana crown jewels, and now they're melting them down. Steelers. Gospel, handicap, cheat code hack. So yeah, when you handicap somebody, they use cheat codes to mutate the system to equalize everything. And that's permeating the global supercomputer now. That's one of the reasons, in my estimation, I'm being used. Supercomputer, global Catholic parish supercomputer. Debt slave, Bo, Alpha Louis, Hack, Omega. They hate Europe City beautiful, so they sabotaged. Graffiti that shit up. Make our suburbs sprawl. Free market chaos trash. Look super valuable with our supersized livestock. Secret war over beauty, the value of Europe cities, precedents, judgments. Depends on valuation structure. USA diversity, insane. Virus war, healthcare. Absolute bipolar superpower corrupts, turns evil. Beauty illusion mass. Matrix technology wars, rising sun. Sooner sneak attack on old Europe. Evil. Doctor Who, Doctor Evil. Doctor Who, Debt Slave, Alpha Louis, Hack, Omega, WMD. Genetics revolution. Yeah. Life is a weapon of mass societal program. Brainwashing global nations using magic power and network a grid of the Catholic world. Doctor Who, Debt Slave, Alpha Louis, Hack. Yeah, fear of turning off the weapon of mass destruction. And then having to pay for the party. That's why they keep the fucking power going. They're addicted to this. Even though it's flawed, faulty tower logic, they realize that things could change rapidly, especially with media connectivity and the ideological shifts. So therefore, they've got to seize as much power of the globe as they can and destroy as much as they can in order to dine and dash changes in brainwashing masses, zoo hostage motive. Weaponization of a religion. Jesus is the greatest weapon and tool in the history of the world of mass control. The right, after it got into a war of LA and New York, war of Hollywood and New York Yankee Media the right uses Jesus. I don't know if they actually believe in Jesus. They love Jesus because he launders stolen loot for them. He justifies slavery. You know, he's a wild card, black card, magic, get free, looter. They love him. Not to mention he's a weapon to use to brainwash masses, to fight Hollywood and the left. Let's see. Demagogues and charlatans manipulate herds through brainwashing to rig popularity contest elections, to create God, to make laws controlling masses. Art of modern war, strategic interpret. Europe, nations awake consciousness, future vision, 100 to 500 years. Gets into this conserve. I wrote a thing about the globalism movement yesterday. What if in 100 years they create this super invention that would really help the planet advance, but we've run out of materials. The rare earth materials are all gone because of this growth model we work, the gospel of growth. So we can't mass produce it, so we just produce one and put it in a museum when society suffers, because it's all about conservation, smart planet management. That was one of the things I told Europe they could use against the United States. Growth model that was attacking, the reason they were attacking Europe, which is a qualitative system versus the quantitative precedents of the United States. Daily news, demographic, national, and religion percentage breakdowns. Before and after, compare. What percentage I came up with this solution to the immigration problem in Europe. They need to every day, consciousness, rather than hiding the facts in this, it's just spattering of stories. Let's have the real facts on the front page of the national paper. Put the demographic breakdown of every nationality of citizenry of a nation on the front page. How many, let's use Britain for example, how many British, how many Syrians, how many Afghanistans, how many Moroccans, how many various African nations, how many Muslims, how many Christians, that breakdown. Then have a vote of what percentage do you want to surrender? You are surrendering. In 100 years, those entrenched people will be voters, and they will take could be in 100 years, this will look like an invasion force. When the historians look back, that's where the USA Yankee Media joke is going to be. In 100 years, Europe is going to be massive different, and they will probably face civil wars. Civil wars are coming in Europe, without a doubt. Maybe not, it's not that bad right now, but in 20 and 50 and 100 years, it's going to be a lot different. So, vote what percent do you want to surrender to the foreign invaders, as you would call. And I feel sorry for them. But I also came up with the solution of a strong global government to fix the problem so there's no need to migrate. I wrote a book years ago about a strong global government with a strong military that would solve the military problems around the world. It's not create the migration is a huge weapon in the art of modern war. I actually came up with the idea. Are there leaders in downtrodden nations who have an advantage, out of pride, they create wars in their nations to create millions of migrants to flood Europe because they realize the advantage of spreading their seeds? That's warrior. That gets into the whole warrior pride of gaming democracy vulnerability. Mob rule insanity, crazy parties, drunk driving, definitely. Bourbon pride. Ignore reality, perpetuate party agenda, fear of weakness, discredit virus, preach socialism with debt crisis is crazy. Sober realism should dictate platforms preaching socialism with a debt crisis is crazy. Sober realism should dictate platforms, force-feeding agendas, brainwashing herds, quantity, validation, detriment. All right, that's gotten through that. I'm at an hour and 30 minutes. My voice held out good. Hopefully this will not be too, I just wanted to document this for history. So we'll see what this gets me. Y'all have a nice day.